Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm actually going to disagree with Milan Kundera, and I don't think he really knew about dogs because anyone who knows about dogs knows how jealous they can get up with each other and even about people. But the interesting thing is, yesterday we were sitting with the other authors from the festival, having a really serious conversation about politics and culture and protests and all of that. And one of the authors just asked the other one quite innocently, what's the tattoo that you've got? And he turns to her, and this really serious guy says, this is for my dachshund who lived with me for 12 years and just passed away a few months ago. And suddenly the mood in the whole conversation changed. Everyone started talking about their dogs, their relationship with their dogs, the stupid things that they do, why we love them so much, what they've changed about us. And I think that really is the power of a dog, of having something in your life that is accepting of you no matter what you do, no matter who you are, what kind of mood you're in, what you've done recently, what kind of day you've had at work. They're just open to anything. They're completely forgiving. They're completely accepting. And the thing is, when you have people who love dogs coming together, they just start talking, and they don't stop. And hopefully, I think because we have time limitations over here, we are going to stop. But I kind of envisage that is the way that things will go, that you just start talking, and ideas and anecdotes will just flow out of place. So let me start with you, Manjiri. Actually, to start off, tell me about some of your dogs, and the ones that are the most memorable for you.
Actually, Antoine, just too many to talk about. But seriously, I completely agree with you about. I'm going to start in the beginning about the jealousy bit. I too do not agree with Milan Kundra. I think dogs can be jealous and possessive, and it's because they love human beings so much. And I think I had dogs when I was growing up. There was a German Shepherd and there was an Alsatian, but I didn't really understand them. They were just like four-legged animals who wagged their tails and met me when I came back from school. And it was in my college days when I was gifted a Pomeranian called Sheena. And she completely changed my life. She's my first daughter. And after that, I had grandchildren and grandchildren and grandchildren. And then everyone became my daughters. And my family just grew. So I don't know where to start because there's just too many stories to tell.
Okay. Aanchal, hopefully this is easier for you.
Because of my age, you mean? Less dogs in the lifetime.
Perhaps. I don't know.
I think my family's always had dogs. The dog, I remember, my first memory of having a dog in the house is my grandmother's dog, Wendy, who for some reason would get a vanilla ice cream every Sunday. Now we know ice cream is very bad for dogs, but that did not stop Wendy from having it. So that's like my formative childhood memory of a dog. Then I remember a dog when my sister was a child. We had a dog, Kenny, who was stolen. So I associate that memory with my sister. He also had very bad fleas. I associate that memory with my sister. We had a dog who ran away when my brother was a kid. I associate that with my brother. And then at one point we had 4 dogs, I think, in the house. And in a relatively normal-sized house in Delhi, 4 dogs is a lot. There was a retriever, there was a cocker spaniel, and a Dalmatian, and 2 beagle spaniel mixes, so 5 dogs. And I think that was when the house was the most fun. The house was alive, and now only the beagle spaniel mix, 2 of them, sister and brother, they live with us, and I think I cannot imagine my life without dogs. It's very hard to do it when they are a part of everything you go through. Like I was talking to Antoine yesterday and I said, I'm learning a new language and the only people I feel confident to speak it to are my dogs because they won't talk back and they won't laugh at me because it sounds so weird. When I come back home from anything, the first people I want to see is them. When you go to bed at night, you're smiling to yourself knowing your dog is like cuddled next to you. I can't imagine any day without a dog.
Absolutely.
Her memory brought back a memory, if I may.
Yeah.
The ice cream. My dog Sheena used to love kulfi. And there was this guy who used to go, a kulfi wala used to go at a particular time, 3 o'clock. And madam used to be inside the house. So how would you call out to that kulfi wala? She used to bark. And he used to stop. So that was her kulfi episode.
Yeah, that's really interesting because um, in Bombay, you have these carts which do the karvas.
Yes.
And wherever there is a karvas cart, you will always see a stray dog over there. And they know that if they stay long enough, someone is going to feed them, and
Yes.
inevitably
They're very
that happens. But actually, coming to the books and the essays that you've written, Manjiri, you've written a very difficult and a very new idea in Doctrine of Peace, talking about the relationship between people and peace and how dogs can help you find peace. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about that and the book?
Yeah, I can just show the book. This is the book. It's called The Doctrine of Peace. Not the doctrine, but the Doctrine of Peace, which means that there's a very simple philosophy behind this, that humans and dogs have had this bond for more than 15,000 years. Okay, and they can bring in love and compassion into your life. And they are the only ones actually who can do that. So the philosophy is very simple. If you want world peace, you have to be in the company of dogs because they can then evoke sensations and vibrations of peace in your life, which is a snowballing effect. If you feel it, you pass it on to your sibling or your child, and it grows on. And one day, everyone can be at peace if you have a dog in your life. This is very simply put for 300 pages.
So, if you don't have a dog, you won't have peace?
I'm not saying that, but the chances of getting peace, having peace in the world, are more to this very simplistic method of, taking care of a street dog. Because there are a lot of elements in it, like serving, selfless serving, unconditional love, many issues and many features involved in this whole thing. And at the end of the book, I have actually given a 9-sutra path where you can actually adopt a dog and find yourself evolving spiritually. So I really do believe in this. It might sound simple, but it's very profound.
Okay. So, I just want to, I think, maybe challenge the idea a little bit.
Yeah.
Because while it is possible that we could find peace through dogs, dogs are not peaceful animals. They can be extremely violent, they can be aggressive. The essay that I have written in your book about my dog, Chloe, she was a 3-legged dog, but an absolute terror. I mean, she was a bully. She saw a strange dog and she wanted to attack it.
Yeah.
And that was it. I mean, she was territorial, she was bully. When dogs can be aggressive, and you see a lot of street dogs being attacked by other dogs, can you actually find peace in that kind of thing when dogs themselves are not such a great examples?
Okay, so I think that's a very large view of dogs. All of us, including human beings, are governed by this basic instinct of survival and protection and loyalty. And dogs especially are governed by that. So when you say that a particular dog attacked another dog or was unkind or aggressive, you have to really study what really happened there. I'll give you a very simple example. We had 2 dogs, both street dogs. One was called Jimmy and the other one was called Coke. And Coke used to constantly attack Jimmy on the road. And we didn't know why that was, because we were feeding them, we were doing everything in the same manner. After a few days, we realized that Jimmy was actually going blind, and he was sitting right in the middle of the street. So what was Coke actually doing? He was actually driving him away from the main road to sit in some corner, and we didn't know that. So when we look at it from our angle, we feel they're aggressive, or we feel that they're kind of hurt. They are actually protecting us, but we don't really know it. And dogs are, like you said, territorial animals, okay, and they need to be humanized. Like everyone, even an unkind human needs to be humanized. So an aggressive dog needs to be humanized. It's all about friendship and love. So when I talk about peace, it's not about what just dogs can give us. It's what humans can gain from serving dogs. It's a two-way process.
Okay, fair enough. Aanchal, your piece in Himali's book, in the Book of the Dog, is one of the few non-fiction pieces. I think Devdutt also has a piece. For me, actually, it was one of the most difficult pieces to read because you are writing about dogs used during World War I. Um, was it as difficult for you to write about it and to do the research into it?
I'll give a bit of context. I've taken the book cover off, obviously. Great, okay. But basically, this is an anthology called The Book of Dog, edited by Himali Sodhi, who could not be here. So I'm representing this project. It includes 45 writers from across the country writing about their dogs. And more than often, they're personal essays about their dogs that they've had in the past or have at the moment. And I think you're right, there are only two essays that are non-fiction. One is Devdutt Patnaik's, where he writes about dogs in Hindu mythology. And my essay, which is on dogs who served in World War I. And I think there were two reasons why I wrote that essay. One was I was writing a book on Indian soldiers in World War I at the time. So I had a lot of this interesting research, like the Indian soldiers wrote letters home from while they were serving in France specifically. And a lot of those letters mention animals. The animals are doing the work on the farm. The animals are herding other animals like sheep. And a lot of those letters mention dogs. And the thing that really caught my eye was one of the soldiers described a dog churning butter. Like, the wooden, it's like an old wooden, am I making any sense? The butter churner? Yeah. Right, okay. So he described a dog churning butter, and I looked at my two dogs and I said, well, you guys can't churn butter, but I can imagine you eating the butter. And so that was one reason to write that essay. The second reason was that I just couldn't imagine writing a personal essay about dogs that wouldn't involve me ending up in tears. So I was like, well, okay, let's write this historical document about dogs that served in World War I. And it turned out to be really interesting and illuminating on the kinds of roles that animals played during warfare. There were messenger pigeons, of course. There were canary birds that could detect poison gas, horses, mules, all kinds of animals. And then there were dogs. And there was something like 20,000 dogs that served in World War I. And many of them got ranks after, posthumously. Many of them died as well. And as I was writing the essay, it was not really that emotional because, it was more factual, I think, because there was so much research involved. I didn't really leave any space to be emotional. The essay goes through what dogs did. So they did everything from keeping guard, of course. In a trench, they would stand next to their owner's gun barrel and look beyond the parapet to see if an enemy was coming. There were sentry dogs that guarded things with soldiers. There were casualty or medicine dogs that would have medicine patches attached to their collars and sniff out wounded soldiers and either get medical aid to them or take something of the wounded soldier back to the headquarters so that people know there are soldiers out there. But the thing that dogs were most employed for were to be carriers of messages. And they would have little pouches on their collars and, like messages would be put into it. And it's essentially because a human couldn't do this, going through the front lines, going through really dangerous territory. And dogs were able to do it. There were smaller dogs, specifically terriers, that would do things like this. And so I wrote this essay, and then Antoine told me to read the essay again to talk about this, and I read it this morning and I was just in tears. Like, it seemed, I understand what you mean by difficult, because it seemed utterly inhuman to put something that cannot speak to that kind of torture, like the same torture that soldiers go through on the front lines, but they can say, I'm hurt here, or it hurts there. And a dog cannot. And there are, stories of dogs delivering messages after swimming across channels and rivers, and their leg is broken, and their, rib is coming out, and they deliver the message and die. And it's painful to read, and they were trained to do that. And it speaks to their unending loyalty, not just in everyday life, but also in frontline duty. And I don't think I anticipated this reaction from myself.
The other part about it, which also was difficult, and was a lot of these were pets actually. These were not dogs that were brought into service earlier. They were people who either voluntarily or involuntarily had to give up their pets for war, and I can't imagine doing that.
Neither can I, but I think like as we were discussing at that time, wartime is really complicated situation. People send sons and daughters to fight, and I don't think animals were any different, like, but I mean.
I don't know, I kind of feel that there is some degree of volition in a human versus an animal.
Yes, perhaps. But yes, you're right. There were like training schools for these dogs, and then based on what they were good at, what skills they were good at, they were sent to particular front lines. And they also, as I mentioned, earned titles. And before World War I, they were just called mascots. So a lot of armies or regiments in armies had mascots. You would see army cats a lot. If you look at old photographs, you would see, Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh was a mascot for a Canadian regiment that came to England, and then he settled in the London Zoo, and he became the character Winnie the Pooh in the books. And I mean, these kinds of incredible stories come out of, animals serving, and we don't really think about, we never really think about this.
Yeah.
Even horses scattered across battlefields.
True. Yeah. Okay, so let's take it a little bit lighter. I mean, we've kind of talked about slightly a bit more of the gory part of dogs, but we all read a lot about dogs, and we've seen our films. Which would be some of the characters, the dogs that stay in your memory? For me, it's definitely Obelix's dog from the Asterix and Obelix. I think it's Getafix, Dogmatix. I mean, that is definitely. He's one of my favorite characters. I mean, he gets upset when trees are uprooted, and he can always smell out boars. So that's my perfect mix. The other dog, actually, that I remember growing up with and thinking a lot of was this television series called Lassie, which was the border collie, and I just fell in love with him. And I said I absolutely wanted to have one. Then I said maybe not in Bombay weather.
Yeah.
So. Which are yours?
No, like you mentioned Lassie, my first memory of a dog film is Lassie Come Home. And I saw it as a child, and it impressed me so much. I mean, I didn't even understand dogs at that point. I just looked at them as dogs. But that film completely changed me at some subconscious level. But so yes, Lassie definitely. And films, I'm going to confess here, I don't watch dog films because they make me cry. And they make me so emotional, and I just hate it. So I don't watch dog films. The moment somebody says, for example, Charlie, the recent Charlie, there's one called Charlie which came, wasn't it Charlie?
I don't know.
One from the south which came, which is really being talked about. Okay. And oh God, it's like you can cry from the first moment till the last. So I didn't watch it. But what I'm saying is that so films are not for me. I get too emotional, and I really connect with the dogs. I feel bad for them, and like she felt bad for her thing. I'm like completely emotional. But I know that dogs play a very important role in fiction as well. So Enid Blyton's Buster of the Five Findouters, or Timmy, Famous Five. I mean, these are dogs who have taught me teamwork. They're dogs who have taught me friendship is above everything, or sibling love, or solving things together, or going on trips together. It's incomplete without a dog. So when I had my two dogs, Tuggy, Brownie, from when they were 6 months old, from then onwards, I used to take them in my car, no matter where I went. So that was the influence, kind of thing. So I remember these kind of things more than the films. There's one film I do remember, and that's 8 Below, I think. Where 8 Below, where they are in this Arctic camp, and this person who's looking after the sledge dogs, he has to leave because he's injured, and they have to evacuate the whole thing. And he leaves the dogs there and goes, and they promise him that we will come back and take the dogs, but they don't. And some months later, when he comes out of his coma or whatever, he realizes the dogs are still there. And I was so upset when I saw that film, because I would not have left the dogs. You see, so that's the kind of thing. I never watch dog films because I always have a grouse against them.
Do you have the same grouse?
I think I somehow watch lighter films. I don't know why. Like all the films that are coming to mind are animated. I'm also like I was born in 1990s. So I'm a 90s kid, and it's very much like the Lady and the Tramp. Was that the film where like lady looks out of the window and says all the dogs look like their owners or the owners look like their dogs? There's a little scene in it,
I
right?
just remember the spaghetti scene.
Okay, well, yeah, obviously. And then I remember reading 101 Dalmatians as a kid.
Wow.
And it was beautiful. And then the films and the entire franchise is also beautiful. And yes, the sad movies, Hachiko, oh my God, Marley and Me. I don't know what it is about the passing of a dog or the pain of the dog that seems incredibly unbearable. Far more than a human somehow. I'm sure cat people also feel the same way. But there is something kind of undescribable about immediately you don't know what to do to fix the pain of another.
Yeah. Actually, Hemali has a really lovely line in the Book of the Dog where she says, dogs come into our lives to teach us about love, and they leave us to teach us about loss. And I think that's really profound, and that is very, very true. And I mean, I know when one of my dogs died, I didn't eat for a week, which is like, I mean, it was just so difficult for me. And for the longest time, everyone would say, I mean, it's just a dog, I think. And now, slowly that idea is changing, and people are understanding that the loss of a pet is actually traumatic.
Yeah, there's actually a chapter of grief on this and why it is more intense than when you lose another human being. Yeah, so but coming to that sentence, which is really absolutely true, they come to teach us love and loss. But I think over and above that, they also teach us to hope. And I'll tell you why, because I feel that dogs stay in our lives, but even after they've passed on, they still stay connected to us. So they leave us, but they never really part. It's always like that, I feel. And there are stories in this, not just my stories, so many examples of people who have had dogs and they've passed away. Even after they've passed away, the dogs have connected with their pet parents or whatever, pet siblings or whatever. So this is...
I think you have one story about one of your dogs, Funtush, isn't it?
Yes, I have. So my daughter, my multiple daughters may say ek, Tuggy. So Tuggy was everything to me. Tuggy and Brownie, they were together, and Brownie passed away when he was 4. Tuggy passed away in 2018. And she was unwell, and I was traveling. When I came back, I realized she was unwell. So 2 months, I did everything I could to save her. Okay. At a point, I thought I was doing too much because I was subjecting her to medical torture, but I had to do it. I couldn't just give up. After she passed away, I had a book to deliver, actually. So, Voice of the Runes. And I used to open my laptop, and I used to just cry. You didn't eat for a week. I couldn't sleep, and I was crying for a month. And there are 2 episodes connected to this. At the end of the month, I told Tuggy, I said, Tuggy, I can't breathe. I can't think. Give me a sign that you're fine and you've forgiven me. The whole point was that I felt guilty. Maybe she wanted to go and I wanted to hold on to her. I said, just give me a sign that you've forgiven me and that you're fine. So during those 2 months, I used to sleep with her on the floor with her pillow beside mine. And so when I woke up the next morning, there was a clump of her hair on the exact spot where she used to lay her head. And every night she used to sleep on my legs, So the bed sheet used to sink when she used to sit. From that night onwards, every night for almost a month, my bed sheet used to sink. And I used to tell my husband, Tuggy is sleeping on my legs. So, and after a point when I was better emotionally, it stopped. So I knew that she'd moved on. So I know that they definitely care for you no matter where they are, physically or in spirit. They never leave you.
Yeah. How have you dealt with trauma? I mean, I'm sure you've also lost a lot of dogs over years.
I don't really know how to answer that question. I've never been brave enough to write anything about it, even though I may have wanted to. And I think that's one of the signs that you're not really over something, where you can't fully slow things down, look at them from all angles, and describe how you feel. The last dog we lost was a Dalmatian, and she died in my mother's arms. And I don't know, this is embarrassing. I have no words. It's very difficult to describe how it feels. I don't know how you do it. I don't have children, so I can't equate it to children. But it's something completely unexplainable, where there's like a void in your life which is never going to be filled, because this incredible character that's no longer physically here but mentally there still embodies it. And you remember the things they used to do and the way they used to walk, and don't sit on that pillow because that's her pillow. Oh, are you crying? Oh goodness. Well, sorry for this conversation. But the one thing we touched on yesterday is, unfortunately, we do have our favorite dog.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And I think I'm living with my favorite dog right now. And just the thought of him one day not being here, like, I'll constantly tell him, like, please have the exact same life that I do. Like, not one day less, not one. I can't deal with it.
Yeah.
His name is Keats. He's very calm. He can sit with me while I'm writing for 8 to 9 hours. He's incredibly loving. He's really one of those sweet, I named him after John Keats, the poet, and he really has that kind of demeanor. But I think I will absolutely crash if he is not there.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, because before this dog of mine died, and it was like, I think I started worrying about it about 5 years before. And, I kept saying, I don't know how I'm going to deal with it at that point. And I think that is that bond that we have with them. It is a family person. It is a family member. It is as close to that. I know we do tend to anthropomorphize them a bit too much, but I'm not sure how else there is a way, what other way there is to deal with it.
An anecdote comes to mind. I don't know if it's related or not, but my brother, when he used to still live, when he was still in India, he used to feed all the street dogs. And there was this one dog, wo street dogs ka raja tha, right? His name was Rocky. And one day, the MCD in Delhi, which is like the Municipal Corporation of Delhi, came and picked up these dogs to be neutered. My brother was like, he was coming home from school and he was seeing his favorite Rocky being put into that van, and he just couldn't deal. This teenager running after this truck. Rocky ko kahan le ja rahe ho? Like, okay, fine. So it's very, very dramatic. But then it doesn't end there. He follows this truck till like however long he can. The guy's like, piche bacha bhag raha hai, what's going on? And my brother was like 6'2". So this like tall boy is running, and then he comes home, he can't keep up with the truck is gone. He goes to my mom, you have to call and see where they've taken him. You have to see where they've taken him. And now like my mother's calling all the MCDs that neuter dogs around the city of Delhi, and like, do you have a dog named Rocky? Like, does Rocky respond to Rocky? I don't know. But then eventually after 2 days, Rocky returns. My brother is there with open arms to welcome him. Rocky's a changed person after being neutered. He's not like the king of the road. He's very like meek and timid, and he's just like, kharab kar diya Rocky ko unhone. Like, I have never seen... He was like so attached. I mean, Rocky's still around, so my brother's still attached to him. But I have never seen such a dramatic scene, play out like a film.
You do have a bit of a dramatic family, I have to say.
What? No. Who else is dramatic?
Yeah. No, I mean, I can't really envision a lot of people running after.
Yeah. I mean, it was insane. I couldn't believe it. Like, we were all standing in the balcony being like, what? How long do you think you're going to be able to run after this truck, really?
But, I mean, that brings us to an interesting question about strays and about street dogs versus pedigrees. I have only kept strays and rescues. But I understand why people would also want to keep pedigrees. With certain pedigrees, you understand what their character is, what kind of temperament they have, whether they're good with children, whether they're good with old people, whether you want to have a guard dog. With strays, you just don't know. It could be the luck of the draw. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on something like this? Manjiri?
I think I'll talk about the strays, you talk about the pedigree, because
I mean, the thing is, my brother has always been the kind to feed strays. So they've all always been in our house, around the house. And as far as having the house dogs, really, who may want to think they're like strays, because, it's a very like, घर में बिल्ली बाहर शेर kind of, oh no, घर में शेर बाहर बिल्ली kind of situation, sorry. We have always adopted them from friends of ours who've had puppies. So it's not like going, I don't like that going somewhere paying for a dog kind of thing. I don't know how to reckon with that. But we've always been quite comfortable in my family around both. And I do really think, and we've seen temperaments of both also. Very violent dogs inside the house, violent dogs in the street, calm dogs inside the house, calm dogs in the street. So I don't know. I'm comfortable enough with both around my surroundings at least. Yeah.
no, I think it's all about parvarish, honestly. Like she said, you can find unpredictability in pedigree dogs also because of the way they are bred. We don't know what's happened. It's a very bad scene out there. Literally, dogs are raped to get the dogs we want. Dogs are manufactured in such a way, for example, the Dachshund has a long back. Every time you adopt one, you're actually encouraging the long, because the backs break eventually at some point in their lives. They can bend. The pugs cannot breathe. Every breath they take is a torture for them. So you see a Videocon ad or something with pugs in it, you're actually encouraging more torture. So there's a whole history. I mean, I'm sure Menika Gandhi will be able to tell you all about pedigree dogs. I'm not an expert. But when it comes to pedigree dogs and indie dogs, our Indian dogs are so much more suited for our weather. They're extremely loyal. Unpredictability, well, when they're pups, if you train them, they become as good as anyone. They are more loyal than any other dog will ever be. So I do not really agree with this, that they're unpredictable, because I have had street dogs all my life. And I pick them up and bring them into my house, no matter how injured they are. Not once has any one of them done anything to me. Anything to me. So I can vouch for them. And I think that whenever anybody comes to me and says, we want a dog, my first question is, why do you want a dog? Because from what I've seen from the friends who've taken dogs, I know that pedigree dogs, I'm talking about, German Shepherds and Labradors. I know that some of, like, Labs are very, very sweet dogs. And so there is all this in pet dogs. But my first thing is, are you going to keep your dog tied? Do you want it for show? Do you want a companion for your kid? What do you want? What is your purpose of having a dog? Because that will definitely ensure whether you're going to go for a pedigree dog or a street dog. But my view is that if anybody wants to adopt a dog, with closed eyes, just go and adopt a street pup, and you can train it, mold it, and make it the most loving dog in the world.
Well, I mean, I agree to a certain extent, and they can. One of the bigger challenges is adopting older dogs.
Yes.
And with that, you never really know where it can be. But oddly enough, and I have been adopting strays who are like at least 5 or 6 years old and who come from shelters. They can actually be very, very manageable, very, very accepting. And actually, the last dog that I have adopted, which was about a year and a half ago, dogs at that age and who've been out take about, say, a week or a month to kind of adapt. This one was, within 6 hours, she was like, this was a home. She was like always meant to be here. And it was actually pretty sad because she was such a friendly dog that someone had thrown acid on her. Oh. And and because she slept outside a shop and she was obviously very friendly. And it's so strange, it was like she was always meant for a home, and that's not something that you could tell from the start.
I think love can do wonders. All they need, I think dogs are just born to be loved by human beings. If they find the right human, there is the right dog for you. I feel that.
Which is actually interesting because in the way that the history of humans and dogs has evolved, and I think Alexander Horowitz, I think in The Mind of the Dog, she talks about how dogs are one of the very few animals that have learned to understand the human gaze. You know, and more than other dogs, they can relate as well to humans as they can with dogs.
They're incredibly perceptive. Incredibly perceptive. Like this morning, you're crying in front of a dog. They will know how to make you feel better. One of the female dog we have is it's her thing. Like if you're crying or you're upset, she'll be like, "It's okay. It's okay." This is also when she wants food. Hey, what are you eating? Hey, is that a chip? Can I get the chip? You know, but I think their intuition is incredibly strong. You know, and I'm always really impressed by how intuitive they are.
Yeah, dogs understand one mannerism which no other animal does, and that is if you point.
Really?
If you point, dogs look in that direction. And
Not mine. Mine are complete dhakkans.
No, you try it. Try it. Look there and they look there. And that is something which scientists have felt is very unique to dogs. Very unique. So, but then, and of course dogs have an intelligence of 3 years old, 3-year-olds. And they know about 2,000 words on an average, which is great. You see? And they intuitively know everything you feel. Everything. Whether you're sad, whether you're happy, whether they need to be quiet, whether you need them, everything. They have an invisible emotional bond to us, a spiritual bond, which just has to be exploited by human beings and used for the peace of this world, honestly.
A couple of years ago, my grandfather died, and we had 3 dogs in the house at that time. And you know, when there's a death in the family, a bunch of people come to your house. And we didn't really know how the dogs were going to behave, but you're completely right. They were on their best behavior. They knew something had happened. They were somber, if anything. And it was incredible to see that. You know, I mean, they were really mirroring how people were feeling in the house.
I can tell you how they saved us. Okay. You know, so this is something which is still in the court, but I can talk about it. We had a land mafia attack on my mom's house, which is on Ferguson College Road. Okay, and and we look after a lot of street dogs. About around 11 o'clock, all the street dogs that we used to feed came and sat in our veranda. They wouldn't go. And around 11:30, about 70 people came and attacked my mom's house with guns, swords, and sticks. This is real. This is not a film. You won't believe it. They came and they pulled my brother out. I mean, he went out to see something. They pulled him, they beat him up. There was blood everywhere. But they could not enter the house because these dogs were sitting quietly. Not a word from them, but they were sitting guarding our front door. The door. So we have a veranda, and the veranda comes into a main door. So everything happened in this space, but they could not break the dog barrier. They sat quietly because they knew if they opened their mouths, something would happen to them. But they just sat there and gave us so much strength. My sisters went and actually caught the sticks and all that. That's a long story. But the thing is, those dogs guarded our entrance. So much they understand, it's unimaginable what dogs can do for you. Dogs give up their lives for us. I don't know any animal who would do that, or any human being who would do that for that matter. Give up their lives. They come as a front line when some power in the universe wants a life. Whatever, whether somebody is unwell or that time has come, if you believe in all this, dogs go ahead and take that up on themselves. And this is proven. So we don't know so much about dogs. You know, we just look at them as a menace. They're on the streets, they're dirty this, blah, 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 they bark at nights. But there's so much more in it that we don't know yet, and we need to understand them.
Fair. You know, one of the interesting things that I learned about dogs and over the years, and which possibly isn't talked about so much, is how each one of them has such a distinct personality. You know, we talk about dogs generically, like, you know, breeds or whatever it is. You can never, they actually are people. I mean, they have like fully developed characteristics of their own, and that is just so fascinating.
I think within the same household, much like children that grow up together, siblings, dogs can be so different. and they can like different things and behave in different ways to certain situations. From the two dogs that I have at the moment, they're siblings from the same litter, but they couldn't be further apart in terms of characteristics. One is barker. She's a barker. She wants attention. And the other is like the gentlest soul ever. And they have very distinct personalities. And they are the kind of dogs where friends are like, yeah, what are you doing at home? Nothing. Can I come and see Juno today? Like, what's Juno doing? Yeah? Oh, she's sleeping. Yeah. Oh, that sounds great. Can I come take a nap with her? Sure.
I mean, I agree with you. They have distinct personalities. I have one dog in the house called Gattu right now, who was on the streets for about 7-8 years. Then he got hit by a car, and then we brought him home, and he realized that he couldn't go out. So he had to adapt. And he just won't listen. He is so strong and so determined that every night around 2 o'clock, we have to bring him down for a walk in the lane, because that's his haunt. He goes out, he'll go dominate someone, he'll go bark at some car. He has to do all that. So we can't change that. I mean, even though he's never known a home, so he's got a home now, he's got a lovely bed to sleep and food to eat, but he doesn't want it. He wants to be out on the streets. True. So that's how they are, They're completely independent, they know what they want, and they can really dominate human beings.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, we can keep chatting, as you can see, but I think it's time to get some questions from you guys. If you all have any questions about film rights for any of their dramatic kind of families, I mean, I think we'll deal with that later. But anything on dogs, or anything that you want to ask, or anything that you want to share?
Would anyone like to say something about the recent High Court judgment that restricts people from feeding dogs on the street?
The one in Nagpur?
Yeah, the Nagpur judgment.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a very, very silly judgment, because it encroaches on your right to be compassionate and right to feed. And if I want to feed a human being, no one can stop me. If I want to feed a dog, no one can stop me. And it goes against the Supreme Court order, which says that we have a right to feed dogs. So there is a stay on that order, and there's an appeal against it in the Nagpur, in Supreme Court right now.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a slightly problematic area in India, because on the one hand, people who have dogs obviously love them a lot, and people who take care of strays, take care of loss. But there is also a certain institutional indifference in various parts of the country. Kerala is possibly one of the worst offenders on this account. And it's very odd that the Nagpur judgment came about. I don't know what the specific context in Nagpur is, but we do see this kind of a bias in various parts of the country, where you have like tremendous support for dogs and street dogs, but also an institutional anger against them. Yeah. Anybody else would?
Any one of you have dogs at home? You do? Anybody else? Okay. Are they pedigree dogs, street dogs, pedigree dogs? Which one? Rottweiler.
Oh, lovely.
Wow. What about you? Indie dogs. Okay, yeah. Any one of you feed the street dogs? Oh, that's nice. Oh, lovely. Thank you for coming here today.
Yeah. So I mean, in Bombay, we've got a fairly active, and I'm sure in Pune, in Delhi also, there are lots of people who are very active with streets of taking care of, and it's kind of organized pretty well.
Yeah.
So
I think we need lots more people though. Because, I wouldn't have written this book, honestly, because I feel that 90% of the society needs to change. And I think that's one of the reasons I wrote The Doctrine of Peace, because we really need to be more compassionate and loving, not just towards animals, but towards everyone. And it's like coexistence is the only option for us. And if you want to live in harmony, you have to begin with the animals on the streets because you don't get anything from them. Unconditional love and selflessness begins from the street animals. Because from your sibling you'll get something, from your spouse you'll get something, but nothing from the animals on the street, and they are the ones who really need you. And it's a snowballing effect. I think we really need to understand coexistence and harmony. I think it's really the need of the hour.
It is, and I think that is one of the lessons that we can learn, I think, from a number of pets as well. I think cats also, in a way,
Cats also.
offer that, but in a kind of a different way from dogs. And that is something that I think there have been a lot of studies that do show that people with pets tend to be a lot calmer. They tend to be healthier. Their heart rates tend to be much lower and less prone to fatal disease.
Not just that, we are more productive creatively at workplace if there's a dog around. And this has been proven by Google and Amazon and you name it. All these American companies now have floors which are kept for pet dogs with beds and playthings and all. So the employees are allowed to go there and do these things because they know that being with their pets is going to help productivity.
That's something I never get, because I can never understand how people are productive with pets.
Same. I was going to say
mean,
the
like,
same
you have a
thing.
pet, there's a sleeping dog. Why don't you want to go and work?
No, it's the
Yeah.
state of mind that you get into after you play with your pet, and that is what helps you be more productive. You're calmer, you're more composed, you think quietly, and so it grows from there.
I
was
find
gonna
myself
say,
more distracted, sorry.
No, I'm same. Like, why don't you want to go play with the pet if it's there? I would not
No,
work.
you do play with the pet, but it's after that.
Right. I was going to say in universities now, and particularly in centers with students who have ADHD, there are these dog rooms where the dog definitely helps to calm them down, or like there are multiple dogs. And I think one of my cousins went to a university like that overseas where there was like a dog room or a cat room or something like that. So that is a thing now.
Well, we are quite lucky. Our main sponsor, Tata, is actually one of the most dog-friendly kind of corporate houses, and they've been dog-friendly right from the start. And it's possibly the only corporate house that I have been to where street dogs are allowed in the foyer and have always been there. I do know that they get a bath every day very reluctantly. I don't think they like that, but that has been there. So yeah, I mean, it's quite a combination and coincidence that we are having this session.
The one thing I want to mention before the session ends is if you buy, not to like plug the book or anything, but all proceeds from our anthology do go to animal welfare shelters, which is something that Himali, the editor, was very particular about from the beginning.
Yeah, I think in Bombay it's going to WST, which is where my dogs have come from, actually, and I think Delhi it's...
May I also plug this? If you buy
Please,
this
please.
book, all the proceeds will go to my dogs whom I feed on the streets.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Manjiri, Aanchal. Naturally we had a great time chatting about it. Thank you guys for being here and for listening in. You've got very good reasons to buy both books. I hope you do. There are some lovely essays in Himali's book. There's some really great ideas in Manjiri's books. He's taken a very different approach on that relationship. So great. Thank you so much.